We're up to the beginning of the 8th parak on Ayin Vav Amid Beis. The parak begins like this. It's talking about the carbon toida, which had 40 loaves. Now, 30 of them were matzah, and 10 of them were chametz. So the Mishnah is going to talk about how much flour is needed. So, hatoida haisaba chamesh sein Yerushalmius. The bread of the toida came from flour that was measuring 5 Yerushalmi saws. Basically, the pasuk says that the flour of the carbon toida is 2 ephah. Now, we have a tradition that an ephah is 3 saw, which means 2 ephahs is 6 saw. 6 saw in Yerushalmis, in Midbari. 5 saw in Yerushalmis and 6 Midbaris. Obviously, the Torah, when it describes ephah, which is 6 saw, 2 ephahs, which is 6 saw, it's describing the measures that they had in the Midbar. Now, when they changed from the Midbar to Yerushalayim, the measure of saw went from 6 to 5. Meaning what was originally, let's say the container that originally held 6 saw when the Jews were in the desert, will now hold 5. So it's 6 saw, which is now practically 5. Esrim, now, so that's 2 ephah, which is 6 saw. These 2 ephah also contained Esrim isaron, which is also 20 isaron. So it's 20 isaron of flour. Now, what's interesting about this is, the Gemara will find sources for all this. So it's 20 isaron of flour for the entire carbon toda. Now, you'd think, it's 40 loaves, 20 isaron, divided evenly. It's not the case. Half of it goes for the 10 chametz, and half of it is divided amongst the 30 matzah. So basically, half of the chametz, half of the matzah, although the chametz only has 10 loaves, the matzah has 30, so the matzah loaves are going to be smaller than the chametz loaves. And the Mishnah speaks this out, asar l'chametz or asar l'matzah. So if you have 20 isaron, 10 isaron for the chametz, and 10 isaron amongst the 30 matzah. So the Mishnah speaks it out. Asar l'chametz isaron l'chala, asar l'matzah. So that means that if it's 10 isaron for the 10 loaves of chametz, that means each loaf was an isaron. Now, you also have those same 10 isaron for the 30 loaves of matzah, which means if you do the math, each one is 0.3 of an isaron. Asara lamatzah, ubematzah shalosh minim, chalos rakikin uravucha. The matzah had 30 loaves, 3 different types, chalo rakikin uravucha, each with 10 loaves. Nimtzu shloisha isaron, v'shlish l'chol min v'min, v'shalosh chalos l'isar. That means that each loaf of matzah had 0.3 of an isaron. Okay. All right. The Mishnah then continues. Now, this method of isaron was doing the one measurement, which is that each ephah is 10 isaron, which means 2 ephahs is 20 isaron, and then we did the math. Midis Yushalmi, and Yushalmi, they had a different measure. It's the same thing, but it's just a different unit of measure, and that was shloishim kav. Instead of 20 isaron, it was 30 kav, which means 15 kav for the chametz, 15 kav for the matzah, then do the math. If 15 kav for the 10 loaves of chametz, that means each one is 15. That means each one is 1.5. And if you do the same thing, 15 for 30, then it's 0.5. So the Mishnah speaks it out. Chamisha asa l'chametz, chamisha l'matzah. Chamisha asa l'chametz, kav u'mechza l'chala. Chamisha asa l'matzah, u'b'matzah shlosh minim. Chalos kikin revuchin, nimtzu chamishas kav and l'chol min v'min, l'shtei chalos l'kav. Okay, so let's do the math. Now, the pasuk, the Gemara starts off, the pasuk said that it's 2 ephah, which we're saying each ephah is 3 saw. That means 6 saw. So the Gemara wants to know, how do you know this? How do you know an ephah is 3 saw? Now there's no pasuk that says how much an ephah is to a saw. That we don't have. But there's a pasuk that says that an ephah that an ephah and a bas are the same measurement. Now we have to figure out, if you want to figure out how much ephahs, how many saws are in an ephah, well, it says an ephah and a bas are the same. So if I can figure out how many saws are in a bas, I'll be able to know how many saws are in an ephah. Just like a bas is 3 saw, so to an ephah is 3 saw. Now, how do I know a bas is 3 saw? A bas gufa min alan. Well, maybe it's from the following pasuk. It says, Loseis masar achomer habas. It says that a bas is a 10th of a chomer. The problem is it doesn't help me, because I don't know what a chomer is. I don't exactly know what a chomer is. I can theorize what it is, but I don't exactly know what it is. Therefore, I can't tell what a bas is. I can't tell what an ephah is. Therefore, so how do I know the measurements? It says, the law of the oil is as follows. Habas hashemen, the bas, maser habas min akur. a bas is a tenth of a kur, and asara habatim chomer ki asaras habatim chomer. So the pasuk it says that a bas is a tenth of a kur. Now a kur is 30 sa, which means a bas is a tenth that it's 3 sa, and a bas and an ephah are the same. That means an ephah is also 3 sa. That's the conclusion. Okay. Zak the Gemara halacha that's gonna at the very end of the Amid come back to the Mishnah. The Gemara is like this: Amar Shmuel, 3 halachas. Now the third one is pretty obvious. The first 2 are a bit of a chiddush. You're not allowed to increase the size of measures by more than a 6. So let's say you have you have a pound, right? Let's say a pound is 16 ounces. And you guys decide, everyone in the city wants to decide that now a pound is more than 16 ounces. The halacha is they cannot change it by more than a 1/6. You can go up to a 6 more. You can't change it by up or less than a 6. You have to keep it, a 6 is the max. So if you want to make it from a pound is 16 ounces to a pound is 30 ounces, you can't. It's more than a 6. You have to, max is a 6, a change. The Gemara will explain why. And if you also want to increase the weight of a coin, now all of a sudden a quarter is going to be worth more money. It's still going to be called a quarter, but it's going to have more value. It cannot go up more than a 6. And you can't charge more for an item. If you buy an item and then you want to resell it at a higher value, you can't resell it at a higher more than a 6. Now that last one is pretty obvious. That's just the laws of Einah. There's an amount that you could overcharge, and more than that is, Chazal says, is not fair. In order to keep the market stable, a 1/6 was the max. That's obvious. The question is, why can't we add a measure? All of a sudden, we want to change it that in New York, a pound is not 16 ounces, a pound is 30 ounces. Can't do that. Why not? Why is a 6 significant? So my time, what's the reason why we can't increase the size of a measure more than a 6? So ilay mishum afkuyitara. Perhaps it's going to be because of inflation. What does that mean? So if a pound was originally 16 ounces, and now a pound is really 30 ounces, that means if I'm selling a pound of meat, the price is going to go up, obviously, because I'm giving more. In the past I was giving 16 ounces of meat, and now I'm giving 30. So the price of a pound is obviously going to skyrocket. Now that's fair. It makes sense. The problem is if you're an outsider and you come to the town, you're selling meat, and you see pound is 30 ounces, you don't know what's going on. So you're just like, oh, all right, I'm just charging more. You think that there's a shortage on meat, there's a shortage on this, and then all of a sudden everything goes out of whack because people are just going to start charging more without realizing that they're doing it for a specific reason. They're just going to think that, in this town you could just overcharge, and it's going to lead to inflation. The problem is, that if that's the concern, if you're really concerned about that, then why is the 6 significant? If you're afraid that it's going to create a fluctuation in the market, and everyone's going to start charging more, so up to a 6 is okay, but not more than that, why is up to a 6 okay? We don't want chaos in the market, so that shouldn't be the pshat. So the Gemara says, El Mishamay, perhaps it's just fraud. Meaning, it's very simple. You come into the town, you don't know that there's a change in the measurements. You sell a pound for the same old price, but you're now supplying more. Right? You're saying, the cost of a pound is $10, and then you're filling it up, and you don't realize that the measures are much bigger. So you're ripping the guy off. So up to a 6 when it comes to fraud, the halacha is that the mekach is kai, and more than a 6, the mekach is batal. So we're concerned. So the Gemara says, they were afraid that if a visiting merchant does not realize that it's now larger, he'll charge the old price, but he's going to be giving much more than he thought. So he's giving the old price for more meat, and that's fraud. So the up to a 6, the what's the significance of a 6? Because a 6, the mekach is batal. More than a 6 is batal. Up to a 6 is not batal. So here's the thing, though. Now, says the Gemara, the problem is that's not true. The concept of a 6 being bitla mekach ba'yonah, that's where you have an item and you're just charging more than market value. But when you're giving the wrong amount of money, or the wrong amount of items, meaning if I tell you, I'm selling you 5 eggs, and then I only give you 3 or 4, whatever it is. We don't say, that's fine, it's within a 6. No. You're giving the wrong item. That's mekach tos. So over here, the concept of a 6 being that the mekach is not batal, that's where I'm selling a baseball, and a regular baseball, and the market value of the baseball is $10. So you could sell up to a sixth above that. You can't sell more than that. But it's just a matter of overcharging. It's not overcharging. The guy is not. He's giving more meat than he realizes. That's a mekach. Says the Gemara. So what's the pshat over here? So says the Gemara El Mishum Tigra. The concern is of a merchant that's unaware of the increase, and basically it's like this. I'm not worried that he's going to give too much, but I'm worried that he's not going to realize that the market has changed, and what's going to end up happening is like this. He buys a pound for $10 from the village, and he comes and he sells that same pound, but he always charges an extra sixth. So, to make some money. But over here, when he comes over here, what's going to happen is like this. Yeah, I'll read you the right. You buy, let's say again, I'm trying to figure out an example. You buy a piece of meat in the village, and then you resell it in the market in the bigger city, with adding on a sixth to make some money. That's always how they made money. Now, but if the city makes the measures bigger, and the villages do not, what's going to end up happening is he's going to take that meat, add a sixth to it, and sell it, and now that's market value. Because basically what happened is the entire city, because the measures went up a sixth, then now what was a pound, meaning what got you, normally what he does is he buys a pound of meat in the village, sells that same pound of meat in the city, adds a sixth and makes a profit. But now all of a sudden when he adds a sixth, he's now not making a profit. Now he's just keeping to market value. He's not actually making money off it. Yeah. Yeah, because they're buying it in the smaller measures, but giving it in larger measures. So they're actually giving more. What they end up doing is they're not actually losing money. They're just not gaining money. Instead of gaining that sixth that they normally get, they're not gaining it. So up to a sixth is fine because then they're not at least losing money. They're just not gaining money. But more than a sixth, they're actually going to lose money. Says the Gemara. The Gemara says, I still don't understand that. Up to a sixth is fine. Why? Because then they're just not making money. Right? They bought it. They added a surcharge of six, sold it for the new measure, and they ended up now just being wash. It was a wash because while they got more of six money, they actually gave that sixth amount of more meat. So it's basically a wash. The problem is, why is a wash okay? You don't want to go above a six because that would be that they're losing money. So you want them to just not make money. What's a merchant that's not making money that's not a merchant. Time is also money. So he's spending all his time and selling and buying just to break even. That's also a loss for him. Says the Gemara, Zabin v'Zabin tigre ikri. If you buy and sell for no increase and you don't make money, are you really a merchant? So what's going on? So why is it that we could only raise it up to a six? So you know the Gemara answers? It's Exeris HaKosov. The Gemara says, Al Amr of Chizda, Shmuel Kra Eshkach V'Darsh. It's Exeris HaKosov. We find a discrepancy in a pasuk, and the only reconciliation of the discrepancy is that they raised the measures and it was up to a sixth. The pasuk says hashekel esrim gera. The pasuk says that a shekel is 20 gera. Esrim shkalim chamisha, esrim shkalim asara v'chamisha shekel imenu yeh lamana. A mana was 20 shekel plus 25 shekel plus 10 and 15 shekel. 10 and 5 shekel. Basically 20, 25, and 15, which is 60, is a mana. So the pasuk is telling me that a shekel in the Mishkan was equal to 60 shekel was equal to a mana. The problem is like this. A mana is 4 dinar. And we usually have 100 dinar in a shekel. So in other words, like this, the way it works, keep it easier. Keep it. The pasuk is saying that a 60 shekel is 60 shekel. This is the only tricky part of that. 60 shekel is a mana. The problem is mana masayin v'arbon have, but a mana is not really 60 shekel. Pashtus a mana is 25 shekel. Basically, forget about the dinar. Dinar just times everything by 4. But basically, the way it normally is that a mana is 25 shekel. Yet the pasuk is saying it's 60. So how do you do that? How do you reconcile that discrepancies? The Gemara says the way you figure it out is like this. Shma min hatzlas. The way you can figure it out is by the following three added facts. Number one, mana shel kodesh kafel hoya. The mana in the Beis Hamikdash was always double of the common mana. So the common mana is 25 shekel. But in the Beis Hamikdash, it's double. So now it's 50. Now the pasuk said 60, so we had to get from 25 to 60. So what you say, first of all, in the Beis Hamikdash, the mana of the Beis Hamikdash was double that of the common mana. So, okay, so it's now 50. But I still have a discrepancy. Think of it, the think of the double. Let's go simple. The average mana is 25 shekel. If you double that, it's now 50 shekel, but you're still off. So the Gemara says, here's the pshat. A mana is 25 shekel. Outside of the Beis Hamikdash, standard mana is 25 shekel. Well, whatever the mana is, we'll double it in a moment. A mana is 25 shekel. What ended up happening is they raised the measure from 25 to 30. And then that you double it for the Beis Hamikdash, that's how you get to 60. So you see that they were able to raise a measure, and you see they raised it from 25 to 30. Now 25 to 30, you'll say that's 25%. The answer is no, because one of the ways to calculate a sixth is milabar. That means that you add a sixth to the end, meaning you figure out the amount that you're going to add, and then you deduct the sixth from that. So instead of saying, so basically you figure out a 30. This is always the tricky part of math. The sixth is of the new larger measure is not the original, meaning you add a sixth to the external. The way he explains like this, you're going from 25 to 30, a sixth of the new mana, not the old one. We take a fifth of the original mana and add it to the mana. Yeah, meaning you add basically a sixth is really a fifth, because it's just a milabar. There's just different ways to calculate a sixth. You're taking a sixth because at the very end, after you've added in a sixth. Because you went from 25 to 30, which means you added 5. So you'll say, well, 5 to 25 is 20%. No. The answer is, once you add 5 to 25, now it's 30, then you deduct, you added a sixth. Okay. So instead of saying I added 5 to 25, which is really a fifth, you say, well, at the end of the day, now it's 30. So now, how much did I add to 30? I added 5. 5 out of 30 is a sixth. So the point is, though, you see that in this convoluted way, that you could add, they made it bigger, and they made it bigger of a sixth. And that was the cap. Ravina, Ravina says the truth is this entire convoluted thing that you're able to add and only able to add the measures up to a sixth. It's Mefarish in our Mishnah. What our Mishnah say? It says Toida Haisaba Chamesh Son Yushalmish and Shesh Midbarius. That originally the 2 Eifa in the Midbar were sixth, and when they got to Yerushalayim, they turned it into 5. That's a change in the measure and a change in the sixth. Shmamina. Okay. Next Mishnah, on the next Amid, turn the page, and now it's a lot easier. Okay, Mekulam hayanaitel echad me'asara truma. You had these 40 loaves, 10 of each. You would give one to the Kohen. Says the Mishnah, Shenema v'hikri mimenu echad mikol karban truma l'Hashem. We're going to dash in this pasuk. Echad shleitel paris. Echad means you have to give him a whole loaf. You can't give him a slice. Mikol karban sheyukol karban hashavas. Mikol karban means you give one of each type. You can't say, well, I'm only going to give you one of the chametz, and then I'll give you one of the chametz and one of the matzah, and then tomorrow I'll give you 2 more chametz to make it up. No, I need one of each. You can't just say, well, I'll give you 4 of one type. One of each type. L'koyin hazayrik as adam shlomli. Yeah, the koyin eats it. V'ashar nechel abaylim. 4 are given to the koyin, and the 36 are eaten by the owner. Tan rabbanon v'hikriv mimenu. This is talking about the obligation to give a truma, to give a tenth to the kohen, min ha-mechuber. It has to be attached. What does it mean, attached? You take all the loaves, put it on one tray, that they're all like attached, and then you give one to the kohen. Echad shlitel paris, you give him one loaf, not a slice. Mikol karban shikol karban hashavis. Again, you have to give one of each type. You can't give 3 of one type or 4 of one type. It has to be one of each. Shleitel min karban al chavera. Truma l'Hashem, and you give a truma. Now, how much? So I told you 1 of each loaf. There are 10 loaves, meaning a tenth. The truth is, I don't know how much it is, because truma can mean many things. The Gemara is going to have a long drasha to basically say the word truma can mean many things. It depends on what type of truma you're comparing it to. Again, the pasuk says you give him a truma to the kohen of this carbon toida, lachme toida. So a truma we're saying is 1/10. The truth is, maybe a truma means something else. Harini done. Well, let's figure it out. Nemar kan truma. It says the word truma by the lachme toida. The nemar b'trumas meiser truma. And we know there's a concept called Trumas Meiser. Trumas Meiser means that you give Meiser to the Levi, and then he gives a tenth to the Kohen. It's called Trumas Meiser. So if it says Truma over here, it says Truma over there is a tenth. Beautiful, it means a tenth. The Gemara says, or perhaps it's a different approach. Nemar kan Truma, it says the word Truma over here. Nemar b'bikurim Truma. Bikurim are also called Truma, and Bikurim are not a tenth. Bikurim are any amount. Malalon ein lo shir, just like a Bikurim, even one grape could be Bikurim. There's no shir. Avkan ein lam shir. So over here, maybe there's no shear also, and you can give I don't know. It doesn't have to be a tenth of all the loaves. Maybe you can give a tiny mini loaf. I don't know. So near lemidaim. So basically, do I compare it to bikurim or do I compare it to trumas meiser? So done in truma she'en acharei truma, mit truma she'en acharei truma by yechich bikurim she'ish acharei truma. The Gemara says, well, I think it's more comparable to trumas meiser. I'll tell you why. When you give this to the kohen, is there any more givings? No, that's the last. That's it. There's no meiser on that. Just give it once and you're done. Trumas meiser is the last thing given, because you gave your truma, you gave your meiser. Now the Levi takes his meiser, gives the truma, and then he's done. It's the completion. Bikurim is not the completion. Bikurim is the first fruits. Then when all the rest of the fruits grow, you have to give your meiser and your trumas meiser. So it makes more sense to compare lachmei toida, where when you give it to the kohen you're done, to trumas meiser when you're done, as opposed to bikurim when you're not done. Gemara says, on the contrary, I could actually compare the opposite. I could say bikurim. Where does that process happen? By the Beis Hamikdash. Where does lachmei toida happen? In the Beis Hamikdash, as opposed to trumas meiser, which happens every single crop in Tel Aviv. So the Gemara says, "Klach l'derzu done truma nechels makom kodesh, truma nechels makom kodesh, v'alch techich trumas meiser shenechels makom makom." So what's going? So how do I know how much truma is given to the kohen by the lachmei toida? Tamalam mimenu truma l'Hashem. It says the word truma l'Hashem. Uksibet trumas meiser mimenu truma. It says the word mimenu truma over here, and it says mimenu truma by meiser. Trumas meiser l'gzeir shava. To tell you, lamanu shetruma she'echad asara. It's 1/10. Here's the thing, though. But I don't know how much flour each loaf is made of. Meaning, I know you're supposed to give a tenth, but how much is the loaves in general? Well, harini done. It says over here, Nemar kan lechem. It says over here, lechem. V'nemar lalon b'shtei halechem, lechem. And it says by the shtei halechem as well, lechem. Ma lalon yisaron lechala, afkan yisaron lechala. Basically, it's like this. I have the 10 loaves of chametz. I have to give a tenth to the kohen. But how do I know how much each loaf is supposed to be? Well, it says the word challah over here. It says the word challah by the lechem aponim. Just like with the lechem aponim, each one is in isaron. Afkan isaron l'challah. So to be each loaf of chametz is in isaron. O kalach derazu. Never kan lechem, never lechem aponim lechem. Or instead of comparing to the shtei lechem, compare it to the lechem aponim. Malon shnei yisronos, afkan shnei yisronos. The lechem aponim, each loaf was 2 isaron. So do I compare it to the shtei lechem, which is each loaf in isaron, or the lechem aponim, which each loaf is 2 isaron? Well, nearly midoma. So who do I compare the lachmei toda to? Do I compare it more to the shtei lechem or the lechem aponim? Shtei lechem and shvus, or the lechem aponim? Well, done in mincha haba chametz mazevach, mincha haba chametz mazevach, vayichin lechem aponim shein ba. Chametz and mazavach. It makes more sense to compare it to the shtei lechem, because shtei lechem is also chametz. Lachmei toda has chametz. That one is a chametz. Lechem aponim, the showbread, is not chametz. Oy kelcha derech zu, or perhaps the opposite. Don mincha haba me'eretz v'chutz la'aretz min hachodesh min hayashan. I actually think that the toida is more comparable to the lechem aponim. Why? Lechem aponim could be from new wheat, old wheat. It could be wheat from chutz la'aretz. It doesn't matter. But the shtei lechem has to be new wheat from Eretz Yisrael. It's the first carbon that was brought of wheat in the new year on Shavuos. So maybe it's not comparable. The pasuk says, regarding the shtei lechem, taviu is plural. There's another carbon like this, and that's the toda. That means that each loaf of the chametz toda is in isaron. Well, Imalalan shnei isronos afkan shnei isronos tamalomer tiyena. The Gemara says one last question. Perhaps it's shnei isronos. The question is as follows. Because here's the thing. This is the funny part about the lachmei toda. Each loaf of the chametz is an isaron, but yes, I'm sorry. The Gemara says Malalon shnei isronos, afkan shnei isronos. Just like in the case of shtei lechem, it's a total of isaron, meaning each loaf of the shtei lechem is 2 isaron total. One, and there's 2 loaves, isaron. Maybe instead of saying, and the lachmei toda is the same, so we're saying lachmei toda is the same, that each loaf should be in isaron. Maybe the opposite. Maybe it shouldn't be that each loaf is in isaron. We should say the total. The total by the shtei lechem is 2 isaron. So maybe the total of all 10 chametz should be 2 isaron. Right? You have a choice. You can look at each individual loaf and say, well, the shtei lechem is an isaron each, so to the lachmei toda is also going to be an isaron each. Well, there's 10 lachmei toda and there's 2 shtei lechem. So instead of saying 10 and 2, maybe it'd be like this. Shtei lechem is a total of 2 isarim. The 10 lachem toda are totally 2 isarim. And that means that each loaf is much less than isarim. Perhaps that's what it should be. Tamalar Matiyana. Lamanu asar l'chametz. So that tells you that there's 10 isarim for the 10 loaves of chametz. Now, there's also 30 more loaves. 30 loaves of matzah. Asar l'matzah minayin. Tamalar ma'achalos lechem chametz. Neged chametz haba matzah. Nimsu esrim esronos lachmei toda asar l'chametz asar l'matzah. The pasuk says whatever you use by chametz, you use by matzah. So the 10 isarim for chametz is also 10 isarim for the 30 loaves of matzah. Just to conclude this topic, it says Yochol asar sheb matzah lo yukulan min echad. Maybe the 10 loaves. So there's matzah is 10 isarim. I told you there's 30 loaves and 3 different types. How do you know it's 3 different types? Maybe it's just 30 loaves of all the same matzah. It says chalos, matzos, belulos, beshemen, or kike matzos, mishuk meshamen, v'solos merkeves. It has 3 different types. It has matzos, belulos, beshemen, rikike matzos, mishuk meshamen, and solos merkavos. 3 different types. So this is the conclusion. Nimtzu shlosha isaron v'shlish chol min v'min v'shalosh chalos lisaron. That the same 10 isaron which goes for the 10 chametz, which is an isaron per, by the 30 matzah, it's also 10 for 30, which is 0.31 of an isar. The Nimsu, the Brisa concludes, Lachmei toda arboim, noitzal men arba, v'noitzal l'kayin, v'sharnach l'kahanim. There are 40 loaves, 1 of each type. 4 loaves are given to the kayin, and 36 are eaten by the owner. Amar ma'ar, just to finish up the daf, v'hikriv mimenu min ha'mechuber. It says that you take the truma from the mechuber. What does that mean? So I told you it means that you take all the 40 loaves and put it on a tray. We tell me the word mimenu means mechuber, connected. But don't we also say about the imurim that you take mimenu from it? What are the imurim connected to? The answer is very simple. The imurim are connected to the whole animal, meaning you are not allowed to dissect the animal until you remove the imurim from it. You take the imurim from it, from the mechuber, from the entire animal, then you can cut the animal apart. We don't butcher the animal until the imurim are removed. Amar Ma'ar, Nemar kan truma, v'nemar b'trumas meiser truma. So we said that we learned that it's a 10th because it says the word truma mimenu over here, and it says truma mimenu by trumas meiser. V'neilef mitrumas midyan. Why not learn out from trumas midyan? Trumas midyan was 1/500th of the total. So now, this is when when Klal Yisrael destroyed Midian, they took like the booty and they gave some Takadish Baruch Hu and the rest were kept. There was also a truma, but it wasn't a 10th. It was a different ratio. It was 1/500th. So why not learn out from this? The Gemara says very simply, done in truma and heges ladaris, and truma and heges ladaris, trumas Midian, shein heges ladaris. These are mitzvahs that go on forever. We're not going to compare it to Midian, which was a one-time milchama. We're going to compare it to Trumas Maisa, which is an ongoing mitzvah. V'neil ben Trumas Chala, but why not from the word Chala? Chala, right? Chala, you don't give a 10th of Chala to the Kayin, you give a percentage. And that also says the word Truma, so why not learn out from Chala? So the Gemara says, Tan Rabbi Shmuel, Don and Davar Shenem, Mimenu Truma, La'afuke Trumas Chala, Deloiksim Mimenu Truma. The answer is, we're not looking for the word Truma, we're looking for Mimenu Truma. And it says the word mimenu truma by lachmei toida. It says the word mimenu truma by trumas meiser. And it doesn't say the word mimenu truma by chal, just as the word truma. Just to finish up. So we're saying that these 4 loaves that you give to the kohen are called truma. The question is, are they mamish truma regarding other halachas? Now the halacha is generally that if a non-kohen eats truma on purpose, you chayv misa b'dei shamayim. And if you do it accidentally, you have to add a 5th when you return it. It's the same thing. If I, a non-kohen, eat these 4 loaves on purpose, am I also chayv misa b'dei shamayim? Is it truma mamish, or it's no? Truma just means it's given to the kohen, but it's not truma. The Gemara says truma slachem itoy the chayv misa b'chaymish, ain't chayv misa b'chaymish. Even the iskish to trumas meiser is trumas meiser. Don't you say, well, we're comparing it to trumas meiser? That means it's trumas meiser. Chayv misa b'dei shamayim. No, or perhaps when the pasuk says that you get punished misa b'dei shamayim by eating truma, boy, dafka that type of truma. This is not mamish truma. Another shayla midamas and midamas. When truma mixes with chulin, it makes the whole mixture aser, and you need bittul, and it's a whole problem. It's called dema. So the question is that the same thing? If these loaves get mixed in each other, can a Yisrael eat the loaves or no? Truma's mixed in. I mean, it's the same shayla. Is it mamish truma or not? Teku, we're not sure. I will stop it.